This video is dedicated to the memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest serving monarch, whose devotion to office and duty inspired generations of my countrymen and women. Queen Elizabeth has been the beloved face of my country and source of strength for 7 decades, and she symbolises all that is great about Great Britain. There will never be another sovereign quite like her. God save the Queen. Anyone who has been watching this channel for a period of time knows that the new Valiverse Action Force figure Desert Rat is based on myself, with a backstory that, while fictional, is deeply rooted in my real-life experience and service within the British SAS. What a lot of audience members may not know, however, is that some fans of the channel have been jesting for years that this is not the first action figure to be based on my likeness. Quite some time ago, my friend Michael French pointed out that the G.I. Joe Big Ben figure bore a striking resemblance to me, and the fact that the character was also a former British SAS trooper gave credence to this growing fan theory. My childhood interest in G.I. Joe and Action Force ended around 1989, when I moved away from playing with action figures and started a failed attempt to become a surfer. So when Hasbro first released the Big Ben action figure in 1991, I was already out of the game, and with my G.I. Joe collecting focus today not going past 1988, Big Ben was a figure that didn't make it onto my wants list for a very long time. Well, as you can see, that's all changed because now I have almost every variation of Big Ben and there's a lot of them to discuss, so stay tuned.
God save the Queen! God save the Queen!
Friends and supporters of the channel first started mentioning the similarities between me and the Big Ben action figure after I shared this photo on social media, and you can see why, with both Big Ben and Desert Rat wearing camouflage face paint and carrying the general purpose machine gun, which is also known as the GPMG, the Mag-58, or the M240. At the time I was somewhat familiar with the Big Ben character, and I did know that he was an SAS fighter within the G.I. Joe storyline, and it was my conversations with these friends that inspired me to start collecting Big Ben action figures. That journey began at JoeFest 2022, where I set out to purchase every complete Big Ben figure that I could find, but I didn't realise how difficult a task that was going to be. Big Ben comes with a lot of accessories, many of which are small and easy to lose. The figure is equipped with a large backpack, that in British military slang we call a Bergen, a satchel with shoulder strap, the aforementioned GPMG with removable bipod, and 2 hand grenades, and his file card reads as follows. File name, Bennett David J. Grade, Staff Sergeant. Primary specialty, Infantry. Secondary specialty, Subversive Operations. Birthplace, Burford, England. Status, on second assignment in Temporary Exchange Programme from 22 SAS. The British Special Air Service is roughly the equivalent of the American Special Forces and maintains an equally rigorous standard for its recruits. The combat records of the SAS personnel are classified, but it is assumed that Big Ben participated in the initial recon operations in the Falklands campaign and in various covert operations. He received his initial training at Bradbury Lines Barracks in Hereford and was on cadre to the NATO Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol School in West Germany. To qualify for the SAS, a candidate trooper must complete the Long Drag, which is a forced march over 30 miles through marshes and rough hilly terrain, carrying 50 pounds of equipment. The march must be completed in less than 20 hours and is a gruelling test of endurance and land navigation. Big Ben completed his march in 12 hours, had a bit of supper, and then volunteered to go back out and help search for candidates who got lost on the hills. It's clear to me that the writer of this file card really did their homework because there's a lot of things mentioned here that are grounded in a level of reality. First of all, suggesting that Big Ben was involved in the Falklands campaign explains the look of the character, with his winter clothing being heavily inspired by the way SAS soldiers dressed during that conflict. I have long been fascinated by this period of British military history because I have served with actual veterans of the Falklands War, and that is what inspired me to create a custom Action Man Falklands War figure. And now that I think about it, this guy kind of looks like Big Ben too. Also, the mention of Exercise Long Drag on the file card is entirely factual, even though some of the text following this mention is slightly inaccurate. Exercise Long Drag is the final test that SAS candidates must pass to complete the aptitude phase of the British Special Forces selection course. It is an individual assessment that tests a candidate's endurance, navigation skills and overall mental robustness. The march covers a distance of 64 kilometres, which is closer to 40 miles than 30, and candidates carry 55 pounds of equipment, plus water and a weapon system, across some of the most brutal terrain that the Welsh mountains have to offer. In order to successfully complete Exercise Long Drag, candidates must complete the route in less than 20 hours. I completed the Long Drag in just shy of 18 hours, and it remains one of the single most challenging experiences of my entire life. The character of Big Ben first appeared in the G.I. Joe Marvel comic in issue 116. He then continued to appear regularly before the series ended with issue 155.
Jolly good show.
Big Ben also appeared in the Deke-produced G.I. Joe animated series, but unfortunately the writers made him sound more like a stuffy World War II era British officer, rather than a Falklands War veteran.
Oh, my dear Dr. Carday, the pleasure is mine.
And the character in the cartoon comes across as quite annoying. My trip to Joe Fest offered up two nice complete Big Ben figures, one that I purchased myself and another that was gifted to me by my friend Michael French. Yet before the convention was over, I found myself in the possession of two Big Ben variant figures, thanks to gifts from Jeff Barker, Scuba Pete and Sal from 2 Cents Toys. This Big Ben figure from 1993 has been produced in a very weird looking colour scheme, and he is issued with a single sniper rifle. Version 2 of Big Ben was only available through a mail-away offer, where he came included in the International Action Force 4-pack, that also featured new variations of Big Bear, Budo and Spirit. Prior to receiving this figure, I knew very little about all the different Big Ben variants, but thanks to a very kind donation from Mvargo97, I now have almost all of them. Big Ben version 3 was released in 2000, in a carded 2-pack with a figure named Whiteout. And this Big Ben figure has quickly become a personal favourite, because he is dressed in a winter uniform that reminds me of the Arctic warfare course I conducted with the Swedish Special Forces. This figure comes with the same accessories as Big Ben version 1, minus the machine gun bipod, and with the Bergen and satchel being recoloured in white. The figure also wears an American flag on his shoulder, which may seem like an odd choice given that this is an English character, but I suspect this stems from the comment on the original file card that marked his status as on second assignment in temporary exchange program from 22 SAS. Versions 4 and 5 of Big Ben were released in 2002 and came with almost the same accessories as the version 3 figure, with only the backpack being swapped out for that classic looking G.I. Joe laser rifle. I really enjoy the new colour scheme used on version 4, as this blends in well with the original Big Ben figure, whereas the version 5 figure has a pale blue jacket that looks more Air Force than Army. Big Ben version 6 came packaged as the driver of the Road Rebel and was released in 2003. This is the first time since 1991 that the Big Ben figure received a sculpting change, with the arms, torso, waist and legs being borrowed from the General Hawk version 2 figure that was released in 1992. There is one more version of Big Ben available, but I have no desire to acquire that since the figure doesn't have the traditional O-ring styled construction. Big Ben version 7 was manufactured with the newer G.I. Joe 25th anniversary body type and was only available as a G.I. Joe Collectors Club exclusive. This figure has a very nice face sculpt and I love the addition of the Union flag on the figure's right shoulder. Unfortunately, the designers gave this figure a machine gun that looks less like the British Army's general purpose machine gun and more like an American M60. And it's the little details like that that really frustrate the military man in me. The original Big Ben figure is an anomaly among early 90s Joes. One of the reasons I don't collect much Joe stuff beyond 1988 is because the line started going down more of a sci-fi styled route, with the figures being adorned in crazy colour schemes. Yet Big Ben really harkens back to the early days of G.I. Joe, when the character designs were mostly drawn from modern military inspirations, and the figure is a largely faithful representation of a British Special Air Service trooper from the early 1980s. To me, this character represents the best of British, so I'm filled with hesitant energy at the news that Hasbro is bringing this character into the 6-inch scale G.I. Joe Classified series. I really want this figure to be good, but Hasbro's track record with the Classified line does not fill me with any kind of confidence. They have proven that there is no one working on the team right now who would do the kind of research it took to write Big Ben's original file card. This Hasbro design team will look back at the different versions of the Big Ben action figure and draw inspiration from those designs, but they would never even consider researching the uniforms and equipment of the British SAS, and the lack of military knowledge shown by this department has been evident from the very start of the line. If you're going to make a toy interpretation of one of the Queen's soldiers, it comes with a level of responsibility, and I have my doubts that Hasbro fully understand this. When I swore my allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and to defend the crown against all enemies, it was an oath that I took very seriously. And in honour of all British soldiers both past and present, Hasbro is duty bound to get this one right. It's something that Bobby Valor understood and never took lightly when he created the Action Force Desert Rat figure, and I sincerely hope that the upcoming G.I. Joe Classified Series Big Ben will be a toy that I'll be proud to display in my collection. God save the Queen.